and welcome to what will hopefully be a decent tutorial about dry brushing, because I have gotten a lot of questions from several different people on how I do dry brushing, what is dry brushing, and what I use for it. So I will do my best and explain this to you. Keep in mind that I'm not a teacher, I've never done a tutorial before, and I'm not properly trained as an artist. I am self-taught, essentially. I teach myself. I see an idea, I have an idea, I see a new technique, and I try it out for myself, and I adjust it to what works for me. And yeah, but we all need somewhere to start, right? So hopefully this could help some of you out who are interested in it. What materials do I use? I have a pad of A3 paper. It's a medium grain, 200 gram weight. It's what you would probably use for just pencil sketches, charcoal, and watercolors. And now, brushes, because brushes are very important, obviously. I pretty much use 3 different kinds of brushes. And for brush number 1, we have this! Ta-da! This is just a very small, round-ish brush. I say roundish because it actually says it's a spotter brush. And I think the difference between a round brush and a spotter brush of this size is that the fibers are shorter and it's a bit thicker, so you can really work the paint into the paper and get a good dense shading with it. I usually start with this brush, and I always use this for, well, small bits obviously, but also any definite lines that I want or hard-ish edges. I use this for, so I will outline the eyes and the iris and the nose lines. I quite like this brush. I think it is good because it is quite stiff, but the fibers are really soft. I think it's a combination between natural hair and synthetic, but I'm not positive. It's either completely natural or it's a combination. But the main point about this is that it's soft, so you won't get any scratchy bits, and it is stiff. Soft and stiff is the way to go. And for brush number 2, we have a filbert brush. That's what this is called. Now, it looks just like a flat brush because it used to have a little bit more of a curve to it than it does now. The difference between this and a flat brush and why it works for me is that filbert brushes are shorter fibers and a bit thicker usually. So again, it's the same idea with the first brush. It is shorter, thicker, which means the fibers stay quite stiff, and they don't bend as easy as some of the other brushes, but they're also really soft and makes nice soft edges when I dry brush. And finally, brush number 3. Ta-da! Now this is just a very, very soft, fluffy, round brush. This one is sable. This is what I will use to get the smooth shading of the skin, and so like around the eyes and the nose and all the soft bits of a portrait. I will use this, and I have a few different sizes. They're just different sizes. They're all the same otherwise. I pretty much use these smaller two for mine. I mean, it depends on what size of picture you're working with. I keep my larger one free from paint. I don't put paint on this one. I will use it instead to brush off bits of eraser from my painting so that I don't like smudge it with my hand or anything. If I have anything on my hand, and that would be bad. And that brings me on to my next material, the eraser. Yes, the eraser. I don't use it like this. I will usually cut a bit off so I have a nice hard edge and thin line, so I can get some really good detailing on highlights when I do that. For more soft highlights, I use a different kind of eraser. This is a kneading or putty rubber / eraser. This actually isn't putty eraser. This is actually just blue tack. That's what I use because it is what I had around the house, and I think it works quite well personally. And then I always have handy kitchen roll. I mean, everyone should have kitchen roll somewhere in their house, right? So just use one sheet. And finally, very importantly, you need some paint. Now the paint that I use is this Winsor & Newton Artisan water mixable oil color. This is ivory black. I don't see any reason why you can't use any other colors or several colors or any other oil paint. This is just what I have at home. Is that the materials covered? We have paper, we have brushes, we have an eraser, and we have paint. Right, let's get started.
As you can see, I've already done an outline of the portrait that I want to do. I recommend doing your sketch on a scrap piece of paper just to make sure you get everything right, and then trace it onto the final page. I've outlined mine in masking tape because I just like to get a hard edge frame on some of my portraits. It looks a bit dirty because I stuck it to my jeans to take some of the stickiness away so it wouldn't tear the paper when I lifted it up. I just put a little dab of oil paint directly onto my kitchen roll. And that's all I will work with, and I actually probably put too much on here for what I'm needing at the moment, because a little will go a very long way. The idea of dry brushing is to evenly coat the brush. You don't want a big glob of paint on it. You don't want it to go on the paper like wet, is it? So you dip it in the paint and then you brush off the excess. And I always brush it on this kitchen roll before I put it to paper. This helps even the coating on the brush. It may look like there's not much paint left on it, but there is. It will show up. Now, sometimes instead of directly dipping my brush into the paint, I will just go to the side of it where the paint has already started to get rubbed into the napkin, and I'll just move the brush over that and it will lightly coat it as well and not get too much on it. And I just see how much is on it. I always start using this brush, and I tend to go along the lines that I've already sketched here. I usually start with the eyes. I guess it's personal preference where you begin if you want to do the overall shading of the skin or the details first. I always start with the eyes because I think the eyes are the main focus to any portrait. I just use, back and forth brush strokes very softly. The harder you go, the more likely it is to see streaks or I guess more of a rough texture, which can be a good thing if you want to go for that. Texture isn't always a bad thing. I see dry brush as a combination between painting and sketching. So it's like doing a pencil sketch with brushes instead. Because I'm working on a larger scale than I normally do, I'm going to use this other brush to just fill in the iris. So there's the beginning of my eye starting to take shape. Obviously, the darker I want something, the more paint I'm going to leave on the brush. But never too much. Always remember to take the excess, a little bit of the excess off, even to just make sure it's evenly coated. I'll show you the soft round brush now and get a good idea of the dry brush technique. So I've lightly dipped that in the oil paint and I've taken the excess off until I can almost see no paint coming off of it now. Just very lightly going over the paper. Now, I myself am probably a bit cautious when it comes to the application of paint, and other people are a little bit more, I'd say, confident than compared to me. But I like to slowly build up the contrast and the shading because it's better to have too little than too much, because it's harder to take away than to add. And while you can take away with this technique using the eraser, it is harder and just not always necessary, really. The harder you press down with the brush and the thicker you put the paint on, the harder it is going to be to erase it. And the point of this is to apply a thin coat of paint so it appears dry. And for highlights, I just take my little bit of eraser and, either my hard one or my putty one, and just go over the bits that I want to highlight. So as you can see, we've gone from an outline like this to that very quickly, and there you have it. That's the basics of dry brushing.